want to use that as a transition point.
Nice. Um, let's talk CONCACAF Champions League, where the amount of research you did was, oh, FCC is in there. I can use their scarf.
That's
Um,
that's not fully
good.
true.
It's not fully false.
It's fair.
um, listen, I'm getting damn tired of talking about this thing. I mean, we do it every freaking year. Another year with MLS and Champions League, and another year we are talking about the disparity between the clubs after an absolute bushwhacking. Is that the right word?
I like it, whether it's the right word or not.
Pachuca smashes Philly 6-0 in one game. Tigres finishes off Orlando 4-2 to highlight another relatively disappointing performance by some of the league's biggest clubs, including FC Cincinnati, who bowed out to Monterrey and Brandon Vasquez revenge arc, right? No MLS side so far that has competed against a Liga MX opponent has advanced. 3 of the 4 quarterfinal matchups are Liga MX versus MLS. How many times do we have to go through this before too many times is the answer?
You'll have to do it every year. It happens every year. We have the same conversation every year because nothing has changed. So why would the results magically change? I mean, the argument, of course, is going to be, MLS is doing all of their talk about how they're closing the gap with Liga MX and they're supposed to be, working towards being the best team, the best league in North America, blah, blah, blah. And how could you possibly say that after you watch all your teams lose this, blah, blah, blah. And then we have the same conversation every year where we point out all the reasons why it happens, but then they all get ignored because it doesn't fit the agenda. One thing that I do think is a difference, and that I'm happy that it happened, and now we have a talking point, is Leagues Cup. And this is where I did my little bit of research ahead of time. And by
Ooh.
ahead of time, it was like the 5 minutes in between episodes. But we talk all the time about CONCACAF Champions League, right? It's the start of the year for MLS. Teams have had 2 weeks basically to get match fitness. Some teams didn't even get any games before it started. Vancouver. They now have to get team chemistry with anybody that's brand new to the team. Match fitness, where you're comparing against Liga MX, who is like what 30 games into their season. I know they have the Apertura and the Clausura, and I think they're like 10 games into the Clausura right now. I don't exactly know how that winds up, but I was looking at Monterrey's schedule, and I think outside of like 1 month, they've been playing consistently every month. So it's like, okay, you have a team that's in preseason mode playing against a team that has been playing for months on end, has built team chemistry, has match fitness. Like, yeah, of course, there's tons of factors swinging in the direction of League MX and reasons why MLS sides are going to look like crap against them. But then you look at Leagues Cup, right? That's a tournament where MLS is in midseason form. Teams have had time to gel. And wouldn't you know it? The quarterfinals is 75% MLS sides. The semifinals, 75% MLS sides. The final, 100% MLS sides. So to just completely look at only Champions League and be like, well, it's clear MLS is not closing the gap. I think is false. And I think Leagues Cup is a perfect example of MLS sides are beginning to close the gaps. And these are legitimate reasons why MLS teams struggle in CONCACAF Champions League.
Fair. It's totally fair. I am going to go maybe to the lower hanging fruit. And we're going back to the rosters, man. We're going back to the way that the teams spend money. Let's talk about Philly and Orlando. Okay. Philly lost 6-0 to Pachuca. Oh, Red Bull almost conceded. Philly lost 6-0 to Pachuca. At Pachuca, there were 7 players on the roster who would have taken up a designated player salary. 8 others would have been above the senior minimum. Orlando versus Tigres. Tigres had 13 designated players on their roster. 8 more on the salary above senior minimum. And again, that's not including the TAM buy down and things like that. So it's just flat rate. And where this hurts sides, as we know, is defensively. Half of the players from that list, the 7 and the 8, were defenders or number 6s in Mexico. Mexican sides are capable of spending money wherever they want to strengthen parts of their team that are weak instead of having to rely on a youth system or an interleague veteran, right? US sides are stuck trying to be clever, dance around roster rules, be compliant. Only 3 major stars, 3 young talents. The rest have to be clever, right? To me, I get why these rules are here. I get how they got us to where we are, and I get how they get us to be important in America. But if we're going to come out here and continue to say that we are impactful on the world stage and we're going to be an important team and all of that, you can't keep having these sorts of letdowns in the Champions League. You can lose in the Champions League. You can't get blown out. The more you continue to get blown out, the less the less serious they're going to take it, right? And we can make excuses for timing of preseason and form or whatever, but it's all overshadowed by the lack that we can't spend on players who, even in their non-peak, performance, are below the level, right? And the Athletic highlighted an article, and I don't know if you read it, that explained why they didn't change the rules drastically when Messi came in. And it was strictly because the owners themselves are stupid. Plain and simple. They don't understand the game. They understand money. So they would just look at somebody's transfer market profile and just buy without understanding how it fits into the team or whatever that comes to, right? That's not the case anymore. Every team's got one, or for most cases, multiple high-level, very intelligent football scouts. Excuse me. High-level, very intelligent football scouts that analyze everything about a player's game. They've got hand-created databases to find the exact player that they want that will fit in their price range and all this stuff. We have the tools to be successful here. We need to allow it to happen, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, where I stand on the roster rule stuff as well. It's a great point. And if we could see teams build their rosters more like how Miami is doing right now, and I think Miami is benefiting hugely off of the fact that people are taking discounts to come play with Messi. That's kind of my assumption on that. Hence why they've been able to get all these talented players to come there. But if we could start building rosters like that, I think we are significantly more competitive in Champions League and significantly more competitive across all of the competitions, Leagues Cup, US Open Cup, Champions League, and then hopefully even getting to the world stage and the Club World Cup. So I would really love to see that. I would love to see situations where we can build rosters more like that, because I know we talked about it preseason about, oh, like how much is Miami really going to be successful? And it's still early days, right? Like there's still time for things to obviously go wrong. But so far they have looked amazing. They look magnificent. They are great. And I think that's a factor. And it's not to say they haven't been hit with injuries. They have been. They've rotated guys. Guys have missed games, and yet they're still winning because they've been able to build such a talented roster. And if other teams around the league could do that, I think that would be a huge benefit to the league as a whole and make the league look way better. I think you could still keep league parity and have new teams winning while loosening the financial rules. It's not like you're loosening the financial rules for a certain set of teams and then everybody else has to still follow the old ones. Like if owners are not willing to spend, then they will pay the price for it. I truly believe that. And I just realized that we're spiraling down a talk of financial rules again. And I know we've completely gone off topic from CONCACAF Champions League, but
No,
I am all on board with your sentiment.
I don't think we're off, because I think it directly ties to our success in that tournament, right? We've always said this, that our best players and their best players are likely on par with each other. If not, we probably have some of the better stars, right? You got Gignac in Tigres and a couple of other higher level Mexican stars, but we've got Lionel Messi. We've got Thiago Almada. Like, our stars are great. And we've also, mentioned just in the last episode that or 2 episodes ago now, that there's this positive trend that our best players are re-signing, right? They're staying in the league longer, which is great. The problem is that the gap between the middle part of our rosters is what kills you every single time you step foot outside America. When your player 15 is a homegrown kid making $80K a year, and their player 15 is some international guy who is making, $325K a year and has been playing in, X, Y, and Z league forever instead of just coming up from MLS Next Pro, the gap is noticeable. So when push comes to shove, at some point we need to have a turning point where we feel like we are strong enough as a league. Sorry, Yaya Boa and Peter Stroud are absolutely going at it. Love it. When push comes to shove, we have to come to a point where we feel strong enough as a league to let the reins go so that we can start competing globally, right? So, and to me, that's the next step for this league as a whole, to step in and say that the world looks upon us favorably as a team, which I believe, by the way, and we'll get to that in a second. Once we start competing, legitimately on the world stage, not just in MLS, that is when we get more respect than just being a league that produces players, right? Right now, you need to be able to go in and create a recognizable global brand, right? There is a reason that the majority of fans in America like the top 6 teams in England. Or the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, the PSG. It's not because they grew up in Barcelona and have a deep sentimental tie to the community values of the club. No, it's because they're a global brand that everybody knows because they win everything that they step foot in. That is how you make your brand recognizable. And that is how you start getting people to take you seriously in a competitive level. Now, there was a comment here, and people were really upset about it. I want to get your thoughts on it, where Don Garber said that the world looks very favorably upon this league. Do you believe that? Because there are a lot of people who don't.
I do. I think there's plenty, like, you'll look, obviously, like, our Twitter feed and like a lot of our social media feeds are going to be filled with everything like MLS related. And that includes the crowd that hates MLS and can't stand them. I think if you look at the rest of the world, if they've taken the due diligence to actually look into the league at all, I think they'll have changed their perspective. Because I think the perspective, and it's probably still the perspective for a lot of people, is that MLS is a retirement league. And it was the right sentiment to have for a long period of time, because it genuinely was. Because all the players that were coming over here were massive stars in their dwindling days, and they were collecting a fat paycheck to come, skip around the field for a little bit and then come off. But if you took the due diligence to actually look into the league at all, which I'm sure the higher ups in teams around the world are doing, because they are paid to do these things. They're not a fan who couldn't care less about looking into the success of MLS. They're seeing this league continuously send out talent at a much higher rate than they were previously, and having these exciting young players come through the pipeline and be targets for transfers overseas. So I think from a fan perspective, there's probably plenty of people who still, well, I mean, locally, there's plenty of people that still hate MLS. Obviously, there's a huge, there's enough of an anti-MLS crowd, but I think even globally, there's still going to be tons of people who still see it as a retirement league. And I think that's just ignorant, and they're not looking at what the league has been doing. But I think those who actually do this for a job, and those are probably the people that Garber is talking to and probably referring to in this case. I think they are seeing the change in MLS in the recent years.
That is, I'm getting real sick and tired of you agreeing with me.
Well, you got to pick more controversial topics then. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, we're doing a top 10 tomorrow.
Yes, let's go.
No, so and that's exactly what I said. I go, when people go on Twitter and start screaming about, oh my goodness, that Don Garber thinks that everybody loves MLS, and I am on Twitter and all of my 7 followers hate MLS. We think it's stupid. And then all of the biggest European accounts that I follow don't even mention MLS. So like, how can we be taken seriously? That's not what he's talking about, right? What he's talking about is when you're looking at the people who are making decisions for the top teams in the world, the top leagues in the world. I think, oh gosh, where is Paxton Aronson right now? Is he at Leverkusen?
Isn't he at Vitesse? I mean,
No,
but
I
that might
mean
be wrong.
the club that he moved to, the German club,
I thought it was Frankfurt.
Frankfurt. Yes, that's the one. Um, so the guy who runs Frankfurt, had this whole interview about America and why he's starting to look there for players.
You're looking for the Frankfurt guy's name?
Yeah, do you have it?
Yeah, Axel Hellman.
Yeah. So he does this interview with the Athletic talking about the United States and why he's looking there. And he comes out and is talking about how we're developing players really well, both homegrown and, flip-flopping talent, right? The league has evolved into playing decent football, not perfect, but decent. And all of these positives, and that's what we're talking about when we say the world looks favorably upon us. We're not talking about the anti-MLS Twitter sphere that all sits around and says, ha ha ha, MLS doesn't have pro rel, so they can't be a good league, and nobody else thinks it's a good league because everybody around. No, that's not what this is talking about. And if you're a part of that, I'm sorry, like, because that's not what this means. And again, when you talk about the way that people think with what they want to think, right? Changing somebody's opinion, regardless of what it is difficult when you have an emotional attachment to it. So if you walk up to somebody and is like, oh yeah, I don't really watch MLS, right? I don't really watch any soccer. You can convince them that, hey, it's a fun league to watch. It's not the best quality or whatever, but it's fun. If you go up to somebody whose entire personality is hating on MLS, it doesn't matter what we do or what we say. Everything that they read is going to be twisted to be anti-MLS, right? So again, that is what that quote is saying, and I absolutely agree with it, right? The world doesn't look at us as a retirement league anymore, no matter what the anti-MLS Twitter sphere noobs are saying, right? The world of the football world, the people who make decisions and actually put the product on the field, is seeing a selling league where good talent is being produced, both homegrown and as a flip price, right? And that they can pick up and move on for their own profit, which is where we should be at this stage. And then once we start competing legitimately at the world stage, not just in our own backyard, that's when things open up for recognizable brands, players wanting to come play for us, right? Why do a ton of people talk about wanting to play in Brazil and Argentina, right? Because there are clubs who have been successful from there that have recognition, right? That's the level I think we need to get to.
Uh, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I hopefully made my point earlier. I, Listen, the anti-MLS crowd will always find a reason to hate on MLS. It doesn't really matter what Garber says or what any of us say. They will find some reason to hate him, and this doesn't really change anything on that perspective. But obviously, the people who are not coming at it from a biased perspective and do this stuff for a living are seeing the change in MLS, and I think that's definitely important. Obviously, like the goal is we want to be able to convince other people internationally as well. Like this isn't a retirement league anymore. Like, pay attention. There's good talent coming out of this league, and hopefully we'll start to do that soon.
Yep. And like I said, I think the big thing is a change in roster construction, the way that we build it. And funnily enough,